And I just have to set up my okay, is my voice any better now?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so I think last we did 236 on Thursday. We had a eventful, I'm sorry, on Wednesday actually. We had a very eventful last week. On Thursday, we celebrated Nityanand Trayodasi, Thursday and Sunday. And Friday, we had a class on the appearance of Shri Narottam Das Thakur. And Friday, we had Kirtan. So today we are going to start again with the Bhagavad Gita. 2.37 is the verse, if I'm not wrong. Excuse me, I'm going to share my screen. We can recite the verse. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay, all right. So let's recite this verse. You can
Yes,
repeat after me.
Prabhuji.
Hato va prapsyasi swargam
अतो वा
अतो वा
प्राप्स्यसि
प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गं
jitva va bhukshase mahim
जित्वा
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महीम्
tasmaduttishta kaunteya
तस्माद्
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
yuddhaya krita निश्चयः
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
अतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गम्
ततो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गं
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महिम्
जित्वा
जित्वा
वा
वा भोक्ष्यसे महीम्
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
हतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गम्
अतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गं
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महिम्
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महीम्
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
Anyone else would like to recite?
हतो वा प्राप्यसि स्वर्गम्
हतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गम्
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसि महिम्
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महिम्
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
युद्धया कृतनिश्चया
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
अतो
वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गम्
जित्वा वा भुक्ष्यसे महिम्
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महिम्
तस्मात् उत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
युद्धः कृतनिश्चयः
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
हतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गम्
हतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गम्
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्ये महिम्
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महिम्
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
युद्धाय कृत्वा निश्चयः
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
चतो न प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गं
हतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गम्
जित्वा वा मोक्ष्यसे महिम्
जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महिम्
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कुन्तेय
तस्मादुत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः
युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः. Anyone else would like to recite the verse? Okay, if not, let's recite the synonyms then. Hatah,
Hataha,
अतः
being killed.
being
being
killed.
killed.
Va,
Va.
Va.
either,
Either.
Either.
prapsyasi,
Prapsya.
Rapsasi.
you gain,
You gain.
You gain.
swargam,
Swargam.
the
Sargam.
heavenly kingdom,
The heavenly
Heavenly
kingdom.
kingdom.
jitva,
Jitva.
by
Jitva.
conquering,
By conquering.
By conquering.
va,
Va.
Va.
or
Or.
Or.
bhokshyase,
Bhokshase.
Mokshase.
you enjoy,
You enjoy.
You enjoy.
mahim,
Mahim.
the
Mahim.
word,
The word.
World.
tasmat,
Tasma.
Tasmat.
therefore,
Therefore.
uttishtha,
Uttishta.
Tishta.
get up,
Get up.
Eat up.
Konteya,
Konteya.
Kunteha.
O son of Kunti,
O son of
O son of Kunti.
Yudhaya,
Yudhaya.
Daya.
to fight,
To fight.
To fight.
Krita,
Krita.
Pita.
determined,
Determined.
Determined.
Nishchayah,
Nischaya.
Nishchayaha.
uncertainty.
Uncertainty.
Eternity.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. Purport. Even though there was no certainty of victory for Arjuna's side, he still had to fight. For even being killed there, he could be elevated into the heavenly planets. I'll read the translation one more time. O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. So, very clear call for a fight. Tasmad utishta konteya yuddhaya krita nishchaya. Very clear, unambiguous call for fighting. So, in the second chapter, we have seen so far that in the 9th verse, Arjuna had surrendered to Krishna, and 11th verse onwards, Krishna starts speaking. You know, Asochan and Vasochasam, that's how Krishna starts. And he says that, you know, wise people, they don't lament neither for dead nor for living. So in a way, Krishna is saying that actually wise people do not lament. That means you are lamenting, that means you are not wise. You know, that's another way of saying it. But Krishna puts it very nicely. So when Krishna starts speaking from 11th until the 30th verse of the second chapter, Krishna actually speaks about Atmagyan, the knowledge of the soul. So what is Atma and what is body? What is matter? What is spirit and what is matter? So he compares the two. Very clear comparison comes. And that's why it is also sometimes this chapter is referred to as Atma Anatma Vivek Yoga. You know, what is Atma and what is Anatma? What is not Atma basically? So, so he compares the two with, you know, he analyzes, you know, the body, the features of matter and the feature of spirit. So now Atmagyan is important, but, you know, it's not that, you know, once we realize that, or once we know that I am not the body, I'm the soul, suddenly I will start living at the level of the soul. There is a process to realize that, you know. So what's happening is in the 31st verse onwards, Krishna actually starts another section in the same chapter. In this 31st onwards, he speaks about Karma Kand. Now, Karma Kand, sometimes it is referred in a like a sarcastic way, but there is nothing bad about Karma Kand. It is a dharmic way of living, you know, at the level of body. You know, even in the Karma Kand level, the knowledge of Atma is important. Why? Because, you know, we say that, you know, you will, like in the same verse where Krishna is saying that, you know, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain heaven, or you will win the you know, battle and you will enjoy this kingdom. So when Krishna is saying that you will attain heaven, obviously it is understood that bottom, it is the soul that will be elevated to the heaven. So that Atmagyan is necessary even for Karmakand. So actually Karmakand is a dharmic way of living. So 31st verse onwards, Krishna starts speaking about, you know, he basically it's at the level of Karmakand, and this verse categorically is Karmakandi verse, you know, that you will enjoy either way. So what Arjuna had said in 2.5th verse, if you remember, he had said, Guru na hatva hi mahanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhakshyam apiha loke. He says, you know, rather than killing my own guru, and Mahanubhava is basically Bhishma Dev. Bhishma Dev is a very great personality. So rather than killing my guru and a great personality like Bhishma, it is better for me to live by begging in this world. He says that I will actually become a mendicant. But in the 2.6 verse, he says that actually none of these options that are there are palatable for me. So he's not able to decide what should I do. So Krishna actually counters that starting from 2.31. So until 2.30, Krishna had countered Arjuna's argument of compassion. So Arjuna had said, I don't want to kill so many people. So many people will die. In the first chapter, he says that, no, I'm compassionate. I don't want to kill so many people. So Krishna had said in the until 2.30 that actually nobody dies, because they are not the bodies, they are soul. You are not the body or the soul. So actually he says even what you see as a death, it is basically, it is just a process by which the soul acquires a new body. It is not actually that their existence will end. And then he said, even if you consider that, the body is going to get killed, still Krishna says that, jatasya hi dhruvam mrityur dhruvam janma mritasya cha tasmad api harite natvam sochitam arhasi. He says that actually the body is going to die anyway, So one who has taken birth is sure to die, and one who dies is sure to take birth again. So either way, the body is going to get destroyed. So you should not give up your duty for this. That's what Krishna had said. So he had countered his argument of compassion until 2.30. Now he's going to counter his argument of enjoyment. Arjuna had given a very strong argument that how will I be able to enjoy this kingdom? Even if I kill my own loved ones, I won't be able to enjoy after killing them. So now Krishna is 31st onwards, Krishna counters that argument. So he says, right in the 31st verse, he brings this point, Swadharman api chavekshya na vikampitum arhasi dharmyadhi udhyachya shreyonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. He says there is no better engagement for a kshatriya than fighting on the religious principles. So when Arjuna had said that, better for me is to live like a mendicant rather than killing my own guru and Mahanubhavan like Bhishma, it is better for me to beg and live in this world as a mendicant. Krishna is countering that in 31st verse. He says that there is no better engagement for Kshatriyas. So Arjuna's primary, conflict that Arjuna had was his dharma, his Kula dharma and his Kshatriya dharma. So the Kula dharma says that he should protect his family members, and Kshatriya dharma says that he should kill the Atatainas, the aggressors. So there was a clash between the two. So he was not able to decide what to do. So here in the 2.31st verse, Krishna is very clearly telling Arjuna that Arjuna, for you, there is no better engagement than fighting on the religious principles. And then what Krishna does is he basically tells Arjuna that what will happen if you don't fight. So I was talking about, that even when we know that we are not the body, we are the soul, we cannot just right away start living at the level of the soul. We still have this body, we have to maintain the body have demands, and the body have senses, and the senses demand engagement. We may be able to artificially restrain the senses for some time, but it won't last long. So there has to be a process by which we can purify the senses and take them towards spirituality, take them towards transcendence. So that is what is happening here. So because Arjuna is also a Kshatriya, he's not just a soul in this world, he is acting as a Kshatriya. He has a specific role to play here. So there is dharma, and obviously we know that dharma has various levels. Dharma is not categorical, that this is right, this is wrong. There are various levels of dharma, and accordingly the person has to rise from one level of dharma to another level of dharma. So obviously for Kshatriyas, the highest level of dharma is to fight on the religious principles. Now there is also this verse that comes in the Srimad Bhagavatam in the prayers of Devahuti, if I am remembering it correctly. I think this comes in the 3rd canto, last chapter, where there is this prayer, Nehayat karma dharmaya na viragaya kalpate na tirtha pada sevai jivan api mritopi saha. So there actually, I don't exactly remember the translation, but the idea is that a person has to rise from karma to dharma. And when a person has, at least he starts understanding what is dharma, then he has to rise towards renunciation, towards vairagya. through dharma he can practice vairagya. And even, we may say, okay, after he has attained vairagya, that's it. But no, this verse says that from vairagya he has to rise to bhakti. Until he does that, until he rises to the highest platform of bhakti, Jivan api mritopi saha. It is the person is living, but actually he's dead. He's as good as he is dead. So if that transition is not happening from karma to dharma to vairagya to bhakti, then that means the person is as good as dead. This is what is concluded in that chapter. So here also we see this transition that is happening. So, so 33rd verse onwards, Krishna tells Arjuna that, Arjuna, if you don't fight, what is going to happen? So Arjuna had said, if I kill these people, if I kill my own kinsmen, I'll attain sin. But Krishna says, Arjuna, he says that, if you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins. So it is like, say, for example, like a doctor is there, and then a patient comes and he's very serious. And he's so serious that if the doctor doesn't right away operate on the patient is going to die. But even if the doctor operates the patient, there is very less chances that the patient will survive. So the doctor may say that, okay, if I operate on this patient and if this person doesn't survive, this patient doesn't survive, then I will get sinful reactions because I am contributing in his death. So if the doctor thinks like that, then it is not going to work, because it is the duty of the doctor to operate on that patient and give a best shot to try to save that patient. If the doctor says that I don't want to operate on this person because I am afraid he might die, then actually he will attain sinful reaction and he will be culpable of negligence of duty, and he will be persecuted. He will be prosecuted for that. Actually, the government will fire him from the job, and then on top of it, the government may actually do some legal actions on the doctor that it was your duty to perform, at least try to save the life of that patient, but you didn't do your duty. So similarly here, Arjuna is trying to run away from his duty. And what Krishna is saying that, if you do not fight on these religious principles, then you are going to attain sinful reactions. And then he says something more scary to Arjuna. He says that actually, not just that you will attain sinful reactions, if Arjuna attains sinful reactions, he will most probably get the results of those sinful reactions in the next life. He may get a degraded birth or a birth in the lower species or a lower planetary systems. But even in this life, Krishna says that you will lose your reputation as a fighter, and you will attain infamy, and people will say really bad words. Avachya, that is what Krishna says. I don't want to speak what people will say about you, but they will speak something which is unspeakable. Avachya, they are not supposed to say that, but they will say those kind of words for you, Arjuna. And for a respectable person, there is nothing worse than being insulted like this. There's also this incident that happens in Mahabharat, when Karna, he actually fights with during the 18 days of war. I think on the 15th or 16th day or 17th day, Karna has a duel with Yudhishthir. And then Karna very nonchalantly, effortlessly defeats Yudhishthir. And it comes to a point where it is clear that Karna will be able to kill Yudhishthir. But he doesn't kill Yudhishthir. He just says, okay, you are no match for me. Just get lost from here. So he kinds of insults Yudhishthir, and then Yudhishthir, as he feels really insulted. For him, it was better he was thinking, why did he kill me? He should have killed me. Why did he just insult me like this? So he goes away from the battlefield, and then he goes to his own camp. And then Arjuna comes to know that this is what has happened. So Yudhishthir was really upset at that time. So Arjuna goes to the camp of Yudhishthir and try to appease him and bring him back to the battlefield. And when he goes there, Yudhishthir was so upset when he sees Arjuna, and he thinks that actually Arjuna had killed Karna, and then now he has come to give me this news. And as soon as he hears that no, Arjuna has not killed Karna, he has not even had a fight with Karna. One second. Do you need this? Sorry. Okay. So he actually says to Arjuna that, Arjuna, what is the use for you to have this Gandiva? Just give it up. And Arjuna had taken a vow that, if someone tells him to keep his Gandiva, then he will kill that person. So Arjuna becomes ready to kill actually Yudhishthir, and Krishna was there because Krishna is the charioteer of Arjuna, and he also comes with Arjuna at that time. So Krishna says, what are you going to do? What are you doing? He is your own brother, and because of him you are fighting the war and you are ready to kill him. So then Arjuna says, but what about my vow? I have taken this vow, I can't just. So he says that there are different ways to fulfill the vows. You don't have to kill your own brother like this. So he says that actually for a respectable person, if you tell him, if you insult him, then that insult is worse than death for him. So you insult him and then don't kill him. So then at that time Arjuna says a lot of bad words to Yudhishthir, and then after speaking all that, then he actually apologizes also, that please forgive me, I don't want to insult you like this. So actually the point is that for a respectable person, insult is worse than death. And that's what Krishna tells Arjuna, that, excuse me, you will incur sinful reactions. In the next life, you will have to suffer. And even in this life, people will speak so many bad things about you, and you will not be able to tolerate that, Arjuna. So for you, it is better to fight in this war rather than to run away. So, and now we see that here in this verse 2.37, Krishna is taking that same. So now he is telling Arjuna that if you fight the war, and even if you don't win the war, hatova parapsyasi swargam, if you get killed in the war, then you will attain swarga, because you're fighting on religious principles. Now we may ask a question that, okay, is it that, anyone can go in a particular war and, fight and then basically get killed and then he will be elevated to the, heavenly planets? So actually, it's not like that. Even in those times and in the current times, we know that the wars are not fought on the religious principles. In the modern day warfare, generally, the most of the casualty that happens is of civilians. Not so many army people get killed. So many civilians actually get killed. We see what happened in Syria. We see what happened in Afghanistan. So many civilians got killed. Even in other wars like Vietnam, even the World War II, the most of the casualties that had happened was civilian casualty. So, and even when the enemies would attack, they would attack most deviously. The whole idea is to catch the enemy by surprise. In the case of Kshatriyas, it is forbidden. You cannot surprise an enemy. You have to actually go in front of that enemy, challenge that enemy. And when the enemy has proper weapons, then you have to fight a duel and then you have to defeat that enemy. So it is a test of skill. It is not just that you surprise that person and when he doesn't have any weapon or even he's sleeping, you just, attack on him and then very deviously kill that person. No. So, so the modern warfare is completely different. And then we also have the cases of terrorism in the modern days. Terrorism is completely killing of actually civilians, unsuspecting, innocent population. And they don't even have any involvement on any of these things, but still they get killed. So the modern warfare is out of question. But even in the cases of Kshatriyas, it is not that, if a Kshatriya has to attain heavenly planets, he just simply has to go and stand in a war and get killed and he will attain heaven. It's not like that. So the war has to be fought on religious principles. It has to be fought for a just cause. It's not that any war you can fight and you can attain like a higher destination. Prabhupada also writes in the purport to 2.32, if I am not wrong, he writes two things here. He says that, the sacrifice of life, so what happens in the case of Kshatriyas is that their dharma is so for Kshatriyas, so basically the idea is that the Kshatriyas are the protectors of dharma. So the Brahmins, they give dharma through Shastras. They teach dharma, they give dharma, and the Kshatriyas, they have to protect dharma through Shastras. The Shastra, they have to use Shastra is weapons. So Shastra is knowledge and Shastra is weapon. So the Brahmins, they give knowledge through Shastra, and the Kshatriyas, they have to protect knowledge, protect dharma through Shastra. So their faith in dharma is so strong, and because they're fighting to protect dharma, that is where, and if if they give up their life protecting dharma, then dharmo rakshati rakshata, so the dharma will elevate them. So because they have given up their life for a just cause, for a dharmic cause, for protecting dharma, then they will get higher destination. But Prabhupada also writes that the life of sacrifice, that so actually sannyasis, the kshatriyas, they lead, they might sacrifice their lives, but the sannyasis, they lead a life of sacrifice. What it means is, kshatriyas may actually sacrifice their life once, in a battlefield or whatever, but the sannyasis, renunciates, actually throughout their lives they are living a life of sacrifice. They're sacrificing so much, their bodies are demanding so much, their bodies also have senses, and there are so many ways in which they can enjoy, but they say no to enjoyment, continuously, constantly they have to say no. Therefore Prabhupada writes in the purport to 2.32, he says that actually both sannyasis and kshatriyas, so the sannyasis when they leave their bodies, and kshatriyas when they die protecting the dharma, they both get elevated. So both are, so sometimes Acharya says that actually the life of sacrifice is more important, it is more glorious, it is more worthy. So the many acharyas have mentioned this, that actually the sannyasis, when they leave the body, they transcend, they don't remain in this matter. They get elevated in the sense that they don't remain in the material world, they go to the spiritual kingdom, or to the minimum they will go to the Brahma Jyoti. So I wanted to talk about one more point here, which Prabhupada writes. Yeah. So Prabhupada writes here in the purport, he says, even though there was no certainty of victory for Arjuna's side, he still had to fight. So definitely there was no certainty. So Krishna actually reveals this to Arjuna in the 11th chapter. He says, Tasmat Tamatishta Yasho Labhasva Jitva Shatrun Bhungshva Raja Samridham Mai Vaite Nihata Purvamaiva Nimitta Matra Bhavasavasa. He says that by my arrangement, all these people have already been killed, and you just have to become an instrument. So until now, he has not actually told Arjuna, he's not revealed to Arjuna. So Arjuna is not yet sure who is going to win, because the opposite side is also very strong. There are warriors like Bhishma Dev, who has defeated even Parshuram. Parshuram is Vishnu himself. And there are also warriors like Drona. So, it's not very easy to fight. It's not that, they will nonchalantly be able to defeat and win the war. So it is not certain if they will win or not. And, they might even get Arjuna might even get killed. So, but Krishna is saying here that even if you get killed, you will attain the higher planetary systems. And if you remain in this, if you are able to kill them, then you will enjoy this earthly kingdom. This is basically you will get the kingdom of entire earth to enjoy. So Arjuna had actually said that it's like a lose-lose situation. If you remember in 2.5 and 2.6, he had said that I don't know what to do. If I don't kill them, they will kill me, and if I kill them, they are my loved ones. Either way I will not be able to enjoy. And even if I become a mendicant, even that's not very palatable. So it was like a lose-lose situation. But Krishna is not turning the tables, and he is saying that actually it's a win-win situation for you and for them also, because he says that even if you're compassionate, you have to understand that even Mahanubhavas like Bhishma and Drona, they're already pious, they're already elevated souls. And if they die on this battlefield, because they're fighting for just cause, they're fighting on religious principles, they will attain a higher destination. So either way, it is good for you and it is good for them also. So both ways it is true. So I just stop here and see if there are any questions or comments about what I said so far, or any corrections.
You said that we should always depend on Krishna, but how do we know that sometimes we have to take some charge, right, of what we need to do? How do we know what we need to do, and what part we have to depend on Krishna?
I don't think I said that, Mataji, so
No?
far. No, but I can address it. It is said that we have to depend on Krishna, but that depending on Krishna doesn't mean that we have to not do our duty. We have to depend on Krishna for results. So we have to do our part and then leave the rest on Krishna. We don't have to get attached to the result. That is the idea. Depending
Oh, I
on
see.
Krishna doesn't mean irresponsibility. It means, we do our responsibility, we do our duty, and even if after doing whatever is necessary on our part, if still the results, favorable results doesn't come, we don't get demotivated, we don't get demoralized. We just
So you're
accept.
saying you still have to do your very best, you're saying.
Exactly. So Krishna doesn't say that Arjuna, depend on me, just relax, drink Coca-Cola and I'll fight. He doesn't say to Arjuna. He says, you fight. Tasmat tum uttishta, get up and prepare to fight. He doesn't say that, just relax and let just see my magic, how I kill people. So actually it is Arjuna, and Arjuna, actually there's so many reverses come in the battlefield. All his sons, all the sons of Pandavas die. What is worse for Arjuna or for Pandavas to see the death of their own children? So many reversals come for them in the battlefield, but yet still they actually keep fighting. They don't.
But we've heard this question also before, that the Lord was there to directly tell you. Sometimes you don't know when to fight and when not to fight also, right?
Right.
I mean.
Yeah, actually, if you look at the whole context here, so they made all the possible, they utilized all the options, they explored all the options, they tried their best to, not have this war. They were ready to take just 5 villages. It is just like a symbolic compromise.
Yes, yeah, they went to the extreme limit of compromise.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like just a symbolic, it was not a compromise. It was like, Pandavas are accepting kind of defeat. It is just a symbolic compromise that, okay, you give us 5 villages and we are ready to give you a free pass.
But Krishna probably knew Duryodhana would not agree anyway.
Yeah. So we say that actually Krishna, whatever he decides to do, he can never fail. But we see that Krishna goes as a Shanti Dut, as a peace messenger.
Krishna knew they wouldn't agree anyway.
Yeah, but he fails as a peace messenger. Such so surprising. He is not successful in establishing the peace, peace mission.
It's not surprising. He knew.
Right.
He knew Duryodhana's mind.
Yeah, but Krishna.
But he had to show to the world.
Right.
We tried everything.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, and if Krishna wanted, he could have intervened with Duryodhana's free will and, just do some magic. But he didn't do that.
Yeah.
He didn't intervene with his free will.
Right.
He made his best effort, and still Duryodhana didn't agree. And then he has to bear the consequences. Therefore, Krishna says, by my vaite nihata purvamaiva, I have already arranged for their killing. You just have to become an instrument. So that
he
result,
knew very well that Duryodhana would not agree. Yeah.
Right. So that result is already decided, but to get that result, you have to do so. It is decided that I will pass in the exam, but I have to first appear in the exam. If I don't appear in the exam, there is no question of passing the exam. So depending on Krishna doesn't mean that, we don't do our
Nimitta Matra do this exam.
Right. So that's what Krishna is telling Arjuna, that just appear in the exam, fight to your best, and then you'll get the results. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, all right. So let's move on to the next verse. We have a long purport to this. So 2.38 is stands in a very striking contrast to 2.37, and we'll see what is the contrast. But 2.39 onwards, that transition happens from Karma Kand to Karma Yoga. So 2.39 is a very key verse to understand the transition. If you miss that, we won't be able to understand how Krishna takes that. There's a discussion that is happening of whether to fight the war or not to fight the war. How does Krishna takes that discussion to bhakti and to yoga and to jnana? So I always had this confusion that where does that transition happen? And when I actually read it carefully, I understood it happens in 2.39. So Krishna gives the hint of it here in 2.38, and then he very clearly tells Arjuna that We'll see what it says. So I don't want to reveal the suspense. So we'll just recite this verse once and then we can read the translation in purport. So you can repeat after me. Sukha dukhe same kritva
Shuke dukhe samay kritva.
labha labhau jaya jayau
Labha labha jaya jayo.
tato yuddhaya yudhyasya
Tato uddhaya yuddhasya.
naivam papam avapshyasi.
Naivam papam avapasya.
Translation: do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. Purport: Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting because he desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or loss, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. Excuse me. That everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna is transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone, as one is in the ordinary course of activities. It is said, Devarshi Bhutapta Nrinam Pitranam Na Kinkaro Nayam Rini Charajan Sarvatmana Yaha Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihritya Kartam. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. This is Bhagavatam 11.5.41. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse, and the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. Again, do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing, you shall never incur sin. So in the previous verse, Krishna was talking about that you will enjoy either way, either you win the battle and you will enjoy the earthly kingdom, or you basically die in the battlefield and you will attain heavenly kingdom. So either way you are going to enjoy. So what is the harm in fighting? He said, therefore, Utishtha, and fight this war. But here he completely, it's like a striking contrast. He says, and just be equipoised. Sukhe dukhe same kritva, labha labho jaya jayo. Now be equipoised in sukha and dukkha, in happiness and distress, and labha labho jaya jayo, in gain or loss, and in victory or defeat. Just be equipoised. Tatho yuddhaya yuddhasva naivam papam avapshyasi. If you fight for the sake of fighting, you shall never incur sin. So very, very, now suddenly the Krishna is changing his tone. So here, now from the Karma Kanda, he is transitioning to Karma Yoga. So in the next verse, he will clearly say that now so far I have analyzed this based on the analytical principles. Now I'll analyze this based on yoga. He'll say that in the 2.39th verse. So, so what's happening here is that, he says that if you fight in this consciousness, then you shall never incur sin. So actually what happens is, whether we will attain a pious, in the path of karma, either we attain, pious credits or we attain impious credits. Impious credit is sin basically. So it is not a impious credit is oxymoron. It is more like a debt. So that's what Krishna is saying, debtor, that's Prabhupada also used that word, debtor. Is not a debtor to anyone. So actually, what decides whether, what kind of result we will attain, whether we'll attain something positive or negative, it is not the activity itself that determines it. It is the consciousness by which you are doing the activity. By consciousness, I mean, what is the motivation? What is your motivation behind the activity? Generally, it is bad. If you kill someone, you will attain sinful reactions, as well as you will be prosecuted by law also. The law also will, they may even hang you if you kill someone. But the same thing, if a soldier goes and kills another enemy soldier, then he is given a medal. He is actually lauded so much. He is given so much state honor. You know, there's so many. What is Terry Prue was mentioning the name of that general in his class last time. I'm missing the name now. But he was considered to be a very brave man. And if you look at the history, he has killed so many people on the. I mean, obviously, he has killed not in the country, not civilians. He has killed in the war field. So what is the motivation by which you are doing the activity? That matters. That basically decides whether you will get sin or you will get pious credit. So what Krishna is saying is that, now he is transitioning to the next verse. He is going to say that actually, if you act in this consciousness, all your pious and all your previous karma will be vanished. And not just that, Arjuna, will get liberated. So one thing is that, okay, whatever karma I have done so far, that balance will be taken away. Okay, now I start fresh. So that's how then whatever now, starting from now, I attain either good or bad. But Krishna is saying that not only your previous bank balance or karma balance will be nullified, but you will also attain liberation. That's how Krishna will put it in the next verse. So I just want to stop here and see if there are any further questions, comments, or corrections. I would prefer not to start the next verse, but because it has a long purport and I don't think we'll be able to finish it today. So if we have any other points, any other questions related to any other verse, we can also discuss that.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. I have a quick question. You were saying next verse, I know you don't want to discuss, but what is the gist that you told? It changes from Karma Kanda to Yoga or Karmic Kanda? Like
No, so
something.
basically, yeah, so he is transitioning to Karma Yoga.
Okay.
So so as I was mentioning, he has talked about, first he talks about Atma Gyan until the verse 30. So it is like the analytical study of what is matter and what is not matter, and sorry, what is spirit and what is not spirit and matter. Basically, so Krishna analyzes by discussing the characteristics of spirit and the characteristics of matter. So that is until 2.30, that is Atma Gyan. And I mentioned that even for Karma Kand, Atma Gyan is necessary, because the whole idea in Karma Kand is that you will go to heavenly planets and you will enjoy. So, but who goes to a heavenly planet? It's the soul that gets elevated. So the knowledge that we are not the body, we are soul, even that knowledge is important, even at the level of Karma Kand. And then Krishna speaks about Karma Kand from 2.31. So if you see, Arthashastra says that, Arthashastra is what Chanakya had taught, what is that niti that he talks about? We say that Chanakya niti, but there is so Rajniti is one. Basically, the idea is that, if, in the course of ruling, if there are any hindrances, if a person is becoming an obstacle in the smooth functioning of the state, then that person should be eliminated. So that is the Arthashastra, that is the Rajniti. That is what, and Chanakya Pandit actually gives a lot of codes for Rajniti. So Arthashastra is what Arjuna was using, and he was quoting that actually better than Arthashastra is Dharma Shastra. I should not be using Arthashastra, I should be using Dharma Shastra. I cannot kill my own guru. And then Krishna actually uses that, and he says that actually, if you follow your dharma, is actually for a Kshatriya, there is no better engagement for you to fight on religious principles. And if you do this dharma, you will enjoy. If you don't do this dharma, if you don't do this, you will incur sinful reactions and you will lose your reputation as well. So that's how it is karma at the level of Karma Kand. So now he is transitioning from Atma Gyan and Karma Kand to Karma Yoga. So towards liberation, how to attain liberation, that's how it will come. So next verse he says, thus far I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive results. So working without fruitive results is actually Karma Yoga. O son of Pritha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of works. So he talks about Karma Yoga, and then he actually also he basically gives a hint of Bhakti Yoga towards the end of the second chapter. That's how the transition is happening. That's what I was mentioning here.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Any other questions or corrections or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes,
Uh,
Prabhuji.
I'm not sure if I heard you correct. Did you say if we come to Krishna consciousness, all our previous karma will be nullified? That's what Krishna said, or I heard you incorrect?
Yeah, so karma bandham prahashyasi. That's what Krishna will say in 2.39. You will be released of the bondage of reaction. That's how it will come. Then, but it will come in the next verse, 2.39. So yeah, if you act in this consciousness, and this consciousness, Krishna is basically talking about acting without fruitive results, which is basically karma yoga.
But that's for future activities, right? That's not for
Yeah.
past. The past
No, no,
action.
no. So the whole idea of karma yoga is, even for past actually, if you, the yoga is, the whole idea of yoga is, you burn your, burn your, all your karma that you have accumulated, either pious or impious, and then you move towards transcendence. That is the whole idea. When you get involved in yoga, that is the whole idea. So even from the previous sinful, so when we say that, okay, when we chant Hare Krishna, we get purified. So what does that purification mean? That purification is basically that we get free from the reactions of our previous karma. That reaction could be good or bad. From both, we get, we get free. Karma bandham prahashyasi. That's how it will come in the next verse.
Prabhu, we have seen like a lot of times devotees are suffering. I'm sure this is because of karma. My understanding, the way I was thinking is that we should not approach Krishna that he will relieve us from all our past sinful activities. Future, yes. I think what he will do is say instead of cutting the hand, he will cut the finger or whatever. He will give us the pain such a way that we can tolerate it.
Yeah, it's a deeper discussion, Prabhuji, that why devotees have to suffer. Why is Krishna? And I think someone forwarded a link to an article this morning. I think it was Gitamala Mataji. So it exactly talks about that.
I was just going to say, it explains so simply the whole process. Yeah.
Right. So, but it is a little deeper discussion, Prabhuji, that, I do sometimes devotees have to suffer. I think we also discussed this once when in one of the Bhagavatam classes that Prasad Prabhu was giving that class, and we had a discussion about where does the suffering comes from, even for devotees. So is it that Krishna is giving suffering? And sometimes we see that the devotees have to suffer really bad, So how do you understand those kind of sufferings? Is it that Krishna is giving those sufferings, or where are those sufferings coming from? So actually, so there are two things. One is that, right, there is sinful reactions. So Krishna says that sarv dharman parityajya mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshashyami ma shuchah. If you surrender to me, giving up all your dharma, giving up all your attachments, giving up all your bondage, giving up all your baggage, then I will free you from all sinful reactions. So, and then he also says that, what is that 4.11 verse? Anyone remembers 4.11? Basically, yeah, right. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam satheva bhajamyaham mama vartamanu vartante manushyaha partha sarvasha. To the degree you surrender, to that degree I reciprocate. So our surrender, can we say that, okay, we are completely surrendered to Krishna? At least I am not. I can say that for myself, that I am not completely surrendered. I still have some reservations. I'm still holding back. So though that freeing from all sinful reactions come when we, give up everything and surrender to Krishna. Giving up everything doesn't mean that we, give up our family and, we go and live in a jungle. That's not what giving up means. Because we see that when Arjuna completely surrenders to Krishna, he picks up his Gandiva and he fights, So if we say that if Arjuna is surrendered, so it's not a passive surrender where you just surrender once, you leave everything and you go away. That's not what surrender means. But even in the terms of Krishna consciousness, that surrender has to be wholehearted and it has to be continuous. So when that happens, then Krishna will certainly free us. And so definitely there is some contamination that is remaining, and that purification happens through the practice of bhakti. So slowly and steadily, we actually march towards the that goal of complete surrender, and that takes time. Until that time, we might have some contamination remaining, and we might be getting reactions to that. But some of the sufferings comes by the nature of the material world. The nature of the material world, Krishna says it very clearly twice. He says in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the 8th chapter and the 9th chapter, he says that this verse is Anityam Asukham Lokam. First, he says that in the 8th chapter, Anityam is it is temporary. Asukham, there is no sukha, but and rather it is opposite of sukha. Asukha. Asukha is basically dukkha. This word is full of misery. It is temporary, and that's the same thing he says that in other words in the 9th chapter. Dukhalayam ashashwatam. Dukh alay. This is alay is full of. Pustakalaya means a place that is full of books. Pustakalaya is basically a library. So similarly, he says dukh alay. This word is full of dukkha. So this is the nature of this material world. So that is also the source of misery. So you can't live in a place of misery and expect that you will get happiness. So that happiness is internal, not external. And even when the devotees are suffering externally, internally they are actually not suffering. We see that in the case of Pandavas also. From an external perspective, if you look at their lives, such a miserable life they had. They were born in the forest, and even when they were princes actually, but they were born in forest. And after few years, they lost their father. And then when they went to Hastinapur, they were there was a whole conspiracy to kill them. And then first Bhima was there. There was an attempted killing of Bhima, and then after they were sent to the house of Black, and that was attempted to be burned. They somehow survived, and then somehow they got their kingdom. And still, their wife was so grievously, insulted, and then they were sent to forest. So if you look at, and then their sons were killed. If you look at their lives, it was such a miserable life from an external point of view. But internally, they were always in connection with Krishna. They were always enjoying at the level of it's at the spiritual level, not at the material level. At the material level, they were suffering externally, but internally they were not suffering because they were always under the protection of Krishna. And that's what Kunti Devi says, in her prayers in Srimad Bhagavatam, that even though externally so many problems were coming, but we were always under your shelter. And she says that I pray that those actually problems come again and again. So yeah, as I was saying, it's a long discussion, but we have to understand these points at a high level. Omi Prabhu, you have any?
No, Prabhu, thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
Prabhuji, just one comment for this topic. For devotees, the sufferings, the intensity is already, what we say, reduced or lessened by Krishna. So that is the care taken by Krishna for devotees. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. That's a good point.
But what about those extreme cases, Ganpati Govind Prabhu, like in salted bread and all that, where they're like tortured and things like that? Is that for Leela or to show that how they...
Prabhupada writes that for elevated devotees, suffering comes for their glorification, and for sadhakas, suffering comes for their purification. So they get, if that salted bread, and you see this incident that gave so much glory to them, those devotees, right? And that gives so much hope to us that after, despite getting so much suffering, and they still remained firm in their Krishna consciousness, they didn't give up Krishna consciousness, and that gives conviction to us, that gives inspiration to us, and that tells us that Krishna consciousness is something worth striving for. If these kind of we may see these kind of incidents in mind, but see in our life, with people like us, general people, normal people, in their day-to-day lives, how they are sustaining themselves in such adverse circumstances on the strength of Krishna consciousness, on the strength of bhakti, then that gives us inspiration. So Prabhupada says that for elevated devotees, for pure devotees, suffering comes for their glorification. And for sadhakas, we may say, okay, we might also get some really bad suffering sometimes, but that is for our purification. That's how Prabhupada explains this. And that is also in the Sri Ishopanishad. Prabhupada explains that suffering comes to remind us that we are, we are not compatible with matter. We are not compatible with this material world. And that gives us the impotence to actually, impetus to transcend the material world. If our life is hunky dory in the material world, then at least I will be happy here. I will not have any impetus to go out. So
Yeah, that's for sure. It's like that article said, constantly reminding us this is not a happy place.
right, exactly. That's what Srila Prabhupada also says in Sri Ishopanishad, to remind us that this is. And in one of the verses in 9th chapter, he writes a very strong point. He says that no sane gentleman would want to stay in this material world. Sane and gentlemen. That means people who want to live in this material world, they are insane and
Insane
they are
and
not
not gentle.
So
At the end, and also he says this body is an embarrassment to the soul.
exactly, yeah. I think I heard one of the classes by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj. He explained it very nicely. Forgot the exact wordings, but it was so striking and it made complete sense. He basically was telling the nature of the material world. It is such an embarrassment that the soul is so elegant, but the body is completely opposite of that elegance. I'm missing the exact words that he used. We have to actually meditate on those words to understand the depth of what he was saying. Yeah, but he says that the bhakti is the balance between elegance and I forgot what it was. I have to look it up. Okay, I think we can stop here. Prabhu, do we have a quiz today? Rasraj Prabhu? Okay, looks like Rasraj Prabhu is away.
No, Prabhu. Today we don't have quiz. Yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Then we can stop here. Okay. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमः अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Grace Ganpati Govind Prabhu ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada की जय
Hare Krishna.